Let me tell you this. Do you know what lost media is? No. I'm asking those to the people who are new to this kind of subject. Lost media is media that doesn't exist anymore, something that is no longer available to the public. This includes TV shows, movies, videos, music, books, games, and much more. But, however, I've heard countless stories of people experience certain lost media, and I do in fact have a lost media experience as well. One time I used to watch a lost version of Ratatouille that depicted two scenes I only remember before I found it. One scene was that of Emil getting killed by being struck by lightning, and a scene of a bird's eye view of a diseased person in a kitchen due to the fact that somebody accidentally puts poison in his food. I like to call a first-person view a bird's eye view, because why not? In the view, people are fighting with the sounds of underwater and the vision was blurry. The words, "No heaven, no hell" appears on the screen. Note, I was at school at that time, and what I just saw just disturbs me. I get it's a movie, but something wasn't right about it. In fact, I found the movie. I was on a hunt for it for a while now, but I just regret watching it for a reason. It just feels too horrible to even take a look at it. Like, why would I want to see Emil getting hit by lightning? Why would I see a bird's eye of a diseased person? It just doesn't feel too right. I remember watching traumatic films and shows too, as such as Elf and Lead, an animated not for kids. But basically, I did find the movie, but I absolutely regret watching it. It's just too realistic for a cartoony fashioned film. No heaven, no hell being put into the screen just makes me uncomfortable. But I've seen experiences from people watching dark and disturbing lost episodes that contain disturbing and horrific scenes of violence and much more. But before I mention the origin of lost episodes, let me tell you a few experiences from some users online. The first user was a male who lives in Chicago and had an experience of a lost episode of the TV show Care Bears. This lost episode focused on some of the Care Bears going to defeat No Heart. This lost episode started to get dark when No Heart transformed into a lion and devoured one of the bears to death. Of course, no blood, but he was screaming in absolute pain. The user doesn't remember who that Care Bear was. Some users have actually seen this episode before. Some of them were traumatized from the viewing for this specific lost episode from the Care Bear series. Care Bears has other dark lost episodes as well, but my experience was only viewed by a few. Not a lot of people have seen the Lost Ratatouille film, but someone has a similar experience with me, and has apparently before the hunt finished. He said that he has in fact seen this alternative version of Ratatouille that was never supposed to air at all. This alternative version of Ratatouille was something Pixar shouldn't be ever allowed in their films, and like I said, I'll explain later. The next user shared his experience with the lost episode of Scooby-Doo, where Shaggy and the gang investigate a haunted hotel with some creepy painting inside. While the investigation is still going, Shaggy sees something odd. Apparently, there was an arm reaching out from the painting and grabbing Shaggy straight in, trapping Shaggy for the rest of his own life, right in that painting. The episode ended there. So basically, why do people make these episodes and films into dark lost versions of themselves? I need to find out, and I need to debunk if some of the users' experiences with lost episodes are real or fake. But from the following who have been saying that you've encountered these lost episodes, I've yet to Yet I have the Ratatouille film. However, I need to go on a scavenger hunt for lost episodes to see if they're real and why the creators made these episodes to begin with. Such as some users saying they have seen a lost episode of The Three Stooges where Curly ate his hand off in that episode. They have been saying that he was hungry and wanted to eat himself in that very specific episode of The Three Stooges. And then there was the episode of The King of the Hill where Hank actually gets injured while getting into a car crash while being drunk. So basically I need to go somewhere to where there's pretty much an explanation on why lost episodes exist in the first place. So therefore, I went to California to ask Disney about this Ratatouille film. Update 2. Apparently today is the day I've learned this Ratatouille film. Disney told me about the actual origins of the lost episodes and why they exist. They filed us from some sort of vault containing episodes, films, games, music, advertisements, books, and audio recordings that have been lost to this day. But why are they kept locked in the shelves inside a vault? It's confirmed that any company has this kind of lost media marketed for themselves, and the production teams surrounding the show or film. Apparently, they made separate private adult episodes for themselves to view and not release it on air. These types of media include dark humor, disturbing elements, drugs, and much more. But why do these people create such shows like SpongeBob SquarePants, The Simpsons, or something like that to include adult themes or supposed dark humor to be added in their own sakes? Each director or production team are too interested in the show at times and create episodes for themselves to enjoy that includes disturbing elements or supposed dark humor into them. Some of the production team members have different tastes of humor, whether it's got to be strange or edgy. The creators will always follow their advice for themselves to enjoy. Some of this dates back to the 1920s or the 1930s with the fact that you weren't allowed to put adult-related themes such as cursing or violent death in the film. Something you weren't allowed to put on film until like in the 1960s or the 1970s. I asked some of the members if they found it an anime series similar to Elfen Lied. They said, there is a lost scene where Lucy gets a strange nightmare. Our company isn't for companies who made Elfen Lied, but I know that scene before, but I'm not interested to it. And I found a Ratatouille film 3 years ago, but the members did show us some lost episodes of cartoons. They showed us the first lost episode, which is a lost episode of The Muppet Show, where Kermit is actually seen with a coat and walks to a bar. He drinks beer in this lost episode and talks to Gonzo about quote-unquote sex. The scene continues on until Kermit gets his face deformed into something unusual and really strange. It's probably because of him drinking too much, but he wasn't drunk. His face looked to be different and some of it was rotting away. The episode then ended there. And then I told them about a lost Mickey Mouse short about Mickey Mouse dying from tear gas on accident. He didn't have a gas mask on whatsoever, so he unfortunately dies from gas. The scene cuts to vultures feeding on his body and it's nothing but bones. I heard it from somebody, but it turned out to be fake. I told them where I could go find that Scooby-Doo lost episode, but however, I needed to go to a Warner Brothers that's surprisingly close to the Disney production headquarters. But before that, I saw that one Ratatouille film I regretted watching 3 years ago. But I have somebody with me to watch this film. But I couldn't. So I asked him about it and led me to a room. Oh God, why was I there? My eyes are shrunken, my teeth are chattering, while my body is quaking to the fact I had to watch a film I regretted for 3 years. The film began. My heart began to race for this film. Emil dies, and at the end was a bird's eye view of a deceased person. The same fucking person who died with the words, "No heaven, no hell," plastered on the screen while 3 people are arguing over the body. It indicates death, and that's why I absolutely regret watching this Ratatouille movie for 3 years. But I got out and drove to a Warner Bros. To find these different lost episodes of specific shows. It was a few towns away, but luckily I made it. When I arrived, I met some of the people there, and it wasn't too bad. But they did have a vault that contains lost episodes. Surprisingly, they managed to get a few lost episodes and films from companies as well. The reason why they were there is because the companies sometimes trade different and separate episodes from different shows to keep them for themselves to enjoy. Our next one was a lost episode of Gumball, a show that was pretty silly and quirky, if you ask me. But that's not what I'm talking about. This episode was titled Gumball's Soul. And this lost episode started with Gumball talking to Darwin about a meeting up with a person who, quote-unquote, who they never met before. They grab their stuff and meet this random person. This person was written cartoon style as usual, but there was something that gets dark. He shows his hands and takes Gumball's soul to hell. It wasn't too messed up, but why would Gumball ever take his soul to hell? That's strange and unnerving if you ask me. Then the next one is a lost version of the movie Beetlejuice. This movie shows one of the characters throwing up on what appears to be a baby mixed with some sort of fish and lizard. Okay, that was some pretty weird stuff in Beetlejuice. What is the point of throwing a weird-looking baby in this version of the movie? Then we got some music album, what appears to be a lost song sung by the Red Army Chore. I played the song, and it actually contains lyrics about the gulags in the Soviet Union and how it affected many people. One part of the lyrics was the Berlin Wall and how a boy died on his birthday after trying to get a ball across the wall. Pretty heavy stuff, eh? And the last item on the list was a lost episode of Looney Tunes. The episode was called Bugs Bunny's Injury. The episode began with Bugs messing with Elmer Fudd. It seems like your normal Looney Tunes episode, but all of a sudden, a bottle gets flung towards Bugs Bunny's arm. He gets multiple cuts on his arms, and for some reason, he puts something that looks like lemonade onto his arm and screams in pain and agony. The reason for that is really unknown, but it's pretty painful and gruesome if you ask me. Update 3. I can't get that fucking image out of my head. What was the point of Disney making a realistic portrayal of life in Ratatouille? The fact that they had a part where there was literally a first-person view of a corpse with the words, "No heaven, no hell," plastered to it? Disney is a happy company, not some truth teller. Now it just unnerved me thinking about death after the film. I always feel like I'm going to get killed for some reason. It just doesn't feel safe. What is the point of a film so beloved by many to have an alternate version of including a first-person view of a corpse? Why do they have to add in the words, "No heaven, no hell" in? And why are there other experiences of dark lost episodes? But anyway, I found what appears to be a lost cassette tape of what appears to be an interview of something lost. I put the cassette tape into the player and played the audio recording of what appears to be an interview. The interview played like this. A production team member is getting interviewed by another person for a lost episode. The tape went like this. Interviewer, so explain to us about the hidden material in the entertainment industry. Member, yeah, that's for ourselves and we make them private. Please ask permission to see them first. Interviewer, can we see them? Member, okay. Here's one of them. A lost episode of The Twilight Zone. I warn you, it contains graphic scenes. He puts whatever the thing in. The episode sounds like it was about a man who's living in some house where he finds some aliens by his yard. He greeted them and they greeted him. However, things go dark. In the audio, I hear the sounds of bone crunching and screaming from the man along with the sounds of what sounds like a cruel experiment on the man so he can become an alien. The episode ended there. The interview continues on with this. Interviewer, so what is the point of making separate private episodes and films while your job was supposed to make these films and TV shows for showing others? Member, here's the thing. It's the fact that there are some weird members of whatever crew there is, especially from companies such as Warner Brothers, Disney, or something like that. Some people just have some weird sense of humor. It's nothing too special. Interviewer, so why are these films made? Member, because the director can achieve anything private idea they want for themselves. They can allow dark humor, violence, and maybe even some realistic elements to that as well. I was about to get off from their recording until I heard the word ratatouille. Member, one staff team member wanted a much more realistic way of some sort of film. However, he needed to work at Pixar still, and asked the director advice for some realistic effects on the characters. It's nothing humor related. Interviewer, so he thinks that this lost version of Ratatouille should have realistic portrayals? Member, yup. Interviewer, exactly why would the director make and follow something like this? Member, it's like a movie's production's free time. They add these vaults that contain lost episodes or versions of certain films, shows, music, games, advertisements, books, audio recordings, and even paintings. They pretty much like to keep them as their own. You know how like certain kids shows or films are marketed towards kids? Interviewer, yes. Member, that's because some of the members aren't into them. They also wanted films and episode marketed towards themselves. They keep these episodes and alternative versions of movies in vaults and maybe even bring them home with them. I stopped listening to the lost interview between the truth behind lost episodes. That's how lost episodes are made. But the question is, why do they sometimes make them public to the viewers? Basically, I was thinking of going to ask some local team member on phone or something like that to ask why they sometimes appear onto some people at different junctures. I don't know why, so I decided to find some local phone number from somebody who's a part of one of these companies running films and shows. So I grabbed a phone book to see if there's any person I could contact. Before that, what I hadn't thought was the Care Bears lost episode to debunk if it's real or not. But I did ask one of the team members at Warner Brothers to deliver me a box set of DVDs of lost films and episodes such as Cats and Dogs, Space Jam, Animaniacs, Looney Tunes, and other films and shows that aren't a part of Warner Brothers, like Rocko's Modern Life, Beavis and Butthead, Good Burger, Beverly Hills Cops, and of course, Elfen Lied. When the box set was delivered, I got these films, but there was a lost episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog that got into me. The episode was titled Courage is Kidnapped, which just sounds plain awful enough. Courage the Cowardly Dog was my beloved childhood character, was into it, but at the same time, I just don't want my childhood character to have a horrendous fate. I saw Courage as a loving character that inspired me to Courage the Cowardly Dog, and I wasn't even into watching it. Update 4. Oh god, I'm absolutely traumatized now after watching the Courage the Cowardly Dog episode. I think I'll never see Courage the same way again. The episode started with Courage, Muriel, and Eustace talking until Courage goes outside. However, he gets kidnapped and is tortured by a bunch of agency members. It is absolutely horrific, and the way he was kept as a slave and was almost starved to death disturbs me. I won't go full in detail in it, it's just too horrific. But it's just nothing sexual assault related or something like that. But he was tortured in a graphic way that I can't explain. He was in a dark room with a bunch of men and was absolutely tortured and is kept as a slave for money. But luckily he survived from those horrors. I found a member who works for Cartoon Network on a phone book. His name was Brian, and I had to call him about these secrets behind certain lost episodes. I tried calling him a couple of times, but he wouldn't answer. It just took me a while when he began to call, and when he did, I asked him about these lost episodes being viewed by some people. He responds, "Oh, how did you people manage to get our lost episodes, you may ask? I'm assuming there is some group of hackers putting our lost episodes in stores. Some production members are actually parents who brought their lost episodes to their houses, and sometimes kids who find these episodes in alternative versions of films on accident, thinking it was a normal show. And sometimes people like to pull stupid pranks on people without getting caught. It's unfortunate, but it's true that people are doing this." Now I could see why these episodes are getting found by specific people. But there's one thing I need to do. To find the lost episode of Care Bears where No Heart mauled one of the bears alive. Then there was another phone number for somebody who worked at Pixar. So maybe I could know much more of the lost Ratatouille film that features realistic things that could happen in real life, such as a male getting killed by lightning or the view of a diseased person. Yet again, I'll say this again. I call first-person viewing a bird-eye viewing, probably because I'm a kind of a confusing person. I called this next person at Pixar about the film. I first said, so what's more to this than the film itself, rather than the bird's eye view of a diseased person? He laughed and said, who calls a first-person angle a bird's eye view? But anyway, yes, there is more to it. He responds with, apparently our members made an alternative version of this film days late after the public Ratatouille film was made. However, what I noticed was that Remy sounded somewhat like Patton Oswalt, but at the same time, he really doesn't. I told him who voiced Remy in the alternative version. He responds with, somebody else who I think is named Gary Shandling. He voiced Remy in this alternative version of Ratatouille. The call continued on, so I said, why did you pick Shandling instead of Oswald? I knew he was going to respond. He sounded like him. I asked him about another question. If he worked at Mill Creek Entertainment. He said, I have before. Are you trying to look for something? I responded, a Care Bears lost episode where No Heart devoured one of the bears. He said, I don't know if that exists, but I didn't know of all containing lost media of any kind during that time. However, I am aware that there could be a lost episode of the Care Bears series with No Heart in it. The call ended there, so I asked another person about this Care Bears lost episode. However, one day, I heard somebody chatting about another person in a hotel containing the word, an episode of Care Bears I found. So I asked this person and told what the episode was about. So, you want to see your childhood ruin? Okay. Apparently no chart transformed into a wild bear and devoured champ bear. I wanted to see it, and therefore they led me to their room. They have the DVD. Oh god. I'm pretty nervous to see Champ Bear getting horrifically devoured to pieces by No Heart. It's not exciting, but I'm gonna watch it. When the episode began, my heart raced. It raced and raced when the episode continued, until it stopped when they get to No Heart. He transformed into a lion and mauled Champ Bear into shreds. He is screaming like bloody murder, and No Heart is mauled him for like minutes on. I stopped watching that episode. It wasn't good to see Champ Bear getting brutally mauled to death by No Heart. It wasn't fun. The episode was real. It was real, and it was horrific. After a few days later, I somewhat calmed down from the Ratatouille film and the lost episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog and Care Bears. Thanks to the people, and thanks to the one audio recording, now you know why lost episodes exist. It's pretty much the end of the story. I don't have much more to say to you than the fact that people kept lost versions of mainstream media for themselves. Introduction. Well, it's been a while since I knew the reason why lost episodes exist. You've probably heard of that Ratatouille film I've at least mentioned a few months. But if you haven't heard, let me explain. If you know Ratatouille, many people have seen it as some sort of classic kid-friendly film. The version I remember seeing, it had scenes depicting violence, torture, death, and many more. But I still have the lost version of this movie, and I in fact rewatched it a couple of times. I went to therapy after watching this along with the Care Bears Lost episode. Same can go with the Courage the Cowardly Dog episode. I'll tell you in detail on what these scenes of Ratatouille include. The two scenes that gave me nightmares were the ones that has Emile getting struck by lightning along with Remy. However, things go horribly wrong. Emile has the shock on his eyes like frozen in fear and what seems to be third-degree burns on his body. Then, there's the other scene of a man who's died from poisoning. We get to see a first-person view of a corpse with the words, "No heaven, no hell," on it, indicating what appears to be death. The body, there was some argument on the body. The movie led me to go to a hospital after viewing it, leading me to be afraid of death and not wanting to die. I would even have nightmares about it as well. Then I was figuring out why lost episodes exist. That's because they have media marketed for themselves. It does take a very long time to finish these lost versions of films, shows, games, etc. to be made. Say it takes around 10 months to a year or two. But there is actually another reason. Money. Even though they sell these items to what appears to be some sort of secret shop that collects films and shows and all that sorts, these items were managed to be found in a couple of stores that sells these, especially Goodwill. But I thought that these items were marketed for themselves. What the hell were they doing as well with these secret items? I was confused on why they had to do it, but it may be due to money or something. But why are they selling some of their secret lost items to some stores even around the world? That's a question I have, but I'm guessing the answer is due to money. And that's because some companies are pretty greedy for the dollar. I've heard there was some complaint from a parent who found some copy of from a show called The Addams Family back around 1998. The parents sued the company who owned The Addams Family. The episode showed the family eating dead mice. These companies had stopped trading their products since 2011 from whatever I had gathered. But something was not okay with Disney selling copies to some stores. Update 6. I just found that one of the scenes in this lost version of Ratatouille was that of a rat character accidentally getting hit by a train off screen. This didn't get me because I've seen that one scene from The Incredibles where Syndrome would get sucked into a plane engine and die off screen. This was a reference to another film that went by the name Der Sinn des Lebens, which was the meaning of life in German. It was some sort of German animation film that was made possibly around in the 1960s or the 1970s that was kept in some sort of vault to keep safe. It was some film about a bunch of anthropomorphic animals that include squirrels, bears, porcupines, chipmunks, and much more. But however, they pretty much are trying and attempting to survive. But unfortunately, most of them die in very graphic ways I cannot explain. One scene was that of a squirrel character getting hit by a train off screen. What really got into me, this film had a shockingly eerie connection to a gruesome and absolutely brutal web series that went by the name of Happy Tree Friends, a series that was made 2 or 3 decades later. It either could be a coincidence or something that was based on it. Say, these gruesome and shocking movies or shows you may have seen and been absolutely traumatized by it might have had connections to other lost media or copied scenes or made references to it. Perhaps it was during the times when companies would often share their films and shows to stores. There is more to this. Especially from these lost episodes from the Looney Tunes, The Muppets Show, or that lost song made by the Red Army Chore. They actually been seen before, and that's because they have been, but only by a few people. I emailed a member at the Warner Brothers Studios, and a member told me 2 lost episodes from the vaults as well. He told me that what these 2 episodes were. The first lost episode. This is the lost episode of Yogi Bear. This episode showed Yogi and Boo Boo having a picnic, but that's until Yogi Bear accidentally steps into some trap while going to catch some fish. He dies from being buried to death by some hunters by being drowned in mud when buried. The second lost episode. This was a lost episode of Tom and Jerry with some disturbingly racist and offensive imagery that wasn't even funny. One of them was pretty much Tom being executed by a bunch of soldiers for being a quote-unquote cat. The other parts of the episode was outright offensive imagery. The member said he was absolutely shocked on why Warner Brothers did this. Warner Brothers told him, quote-unquote, dark humor. This wasn't dark humor, but rather something disturbing. My question is, did anyone see this? Update 7. I just found out about this, and it was revealed that these companies have a little dark secret. Or something. The secret being the fact that companies showing kids' films that feature horrendous features that a kid's show or movie should not ever show. There was a rumor that Disney and other such companies that would love to terrify the children for their own money. This was stopped in 2011 and kept its own due to complaints from people. But this probably wasn't the case. You see, companies are selling these episodes or films in stores that aren't even well known, probably because of the fact that these stores sell these films or shows and such that the stores are visited mostly by adults. These stores do show disturbing movies, and same can go with TV shows, games, and much more. Movies and shows especially go with disturbing cartoons like Watership Down and even Happy Tree Friends. So basically, I was lied to, or they were telling me they stopped marketing their products into public DVD shops not known by many. Adults were basically mistaken for these shows and movies, basically actually marketed for children. They did it for pretty much money. But why did they have to lie to my face for this? Final conclusion. Now for the actual ending. For this story, I have found out that this Twilight Zone Lost episode was actually fake, and same can go with the Lost interview. There was no Lost episode that had this Twilight Zone plot with a man getting experimented by aliens to ever exist. But did Der Cindy Lebens ever exist? I had to find out. But the Warner Brothers employee managed to actually send me a behind the scenes video on how these episodes and movies that were lost and how they're made. In the video, they said it took them around a year or two to complete with different voice actors to be paid, along with the animating and the artist. A movie production screen time sounds pretty damn ridiculous if you ask me, and they were actually simply doing this before for actual money. The video, in fact, showed a segment of the lost episode of the Looney Tunes where Bugs Bunny gets the cut from his arm. While they have been saying this has been a thing since 1928. It must have been hard work for these episodes to be made or something. But these companies should honestly have a reason for why they even send these copies of these dark lost episodes in shops, marketed for adults. That's because the adults should be alerted that and might be mistaken for a kid-friendly public film. Instead of investing money without any warning, they should have added a warning sticker of some rating of some sort. Then I went to another Disney studio to watch Der Sinn des Lebens and rewatch Ratatouille again. I arrived and the staff let me go to the theater. When I went to the theater, I watched Der Sinn des Lebens. The movie itself most definitely seems something like from the 90s. I watched it and oh boy, there was a ton of messed up and graphic scenes. I wondered if Happy Tree Friends actually was inspired by this lost film, or if the creators actually have seen this film. Then I decided to rewatch the lost version of Ratatouille. There it was. The film showed of Emil, of course, killed by lightning with the third-degree burns on his body. And of course, the body. It was a first-person view at the kitchen with the words, "No heaven, no hell" on the screen. But that wasn't all. I haven't seen the full version yet, because the screen actually fades to black and has a quote. The quote reading, "No heaven, no hell. That is all you will see. Nothing. You will always see black in the afterlife. You will hear the sounds of underwater. You won't ever see your friends again. You won't ever see life again. You won't ever do your hobby again. You won't ever see your family again. This is true. Stop believing in the afterlife." This quote was too grim for me to fully read out loud. The scene eventually cut to the person being cremated with a view of the body. I am not even fucking kidding. The movie ended there. I think this is all I could say from this adventure and why lost episodes even exist. However, there was no reason for these companies to even send out copies to understated stores